Everyone is creative.
A creative life requires
bravery and action,
honesty and hard work.
We're here to support and celebrate
and encourage you to make the things that you love.
We believe in the power of community.
We believe in giving a damn.
We believe in face-to-face connections,
in learning from others,
in hugs
and high fives.
We bring together people who are driven by passion and purpose,
confident they will inspire one another,
and inspire change in neighborhoods and cities around the world.
Everyone
is welcome.
Our theme for December is cycle, chosen by our Freiburg chapter in Germany and illustrated by Isabel Meister. Our Freiburg chapter had sustainability in mind when they chose this theme. From their swarms of cyclists commuting to work to their robust recycling programs that recover and reuse 69% of the city's waste. Wow. Our world runs on cycles. There's a frantic buzz of the 24-hour news cycle, the boom and bust of economic cycles, the changing seasons. Every plant, animal, and organism exists in a life cycle of birth, growth, reproduction, and death. Water flows through a cycle of evaporation into vapor, to condensation in clouds, to precipitation that falls in rain or snow. Just as crops are grown on a rotation cycle to replenish the soil, our own creativity requires a cycle of inspiration or inputs, followed by a burst of productivity or entering a flow state, and finally, a period of rest and contemplation. Cycles are circular and keep things moving. The circadian rhythm of our sleep cycle, the menstrual cycle. Our special guest this month is Madeleine Shaw. Now, if you don't know who Madeleine Shaw is, I don't know why you're here. Now, I first met Madeleine a little over a year ago because, spoiler alert, we're currently producing a documentary together about menstrual equity and what it takes to solve period poverty in Canada. And literally everyone I tell about this project responds with, well, have you spoken to Madeleine Shaw yet? And I'm like, I get it. She's amazing. Working with Madeleine, I've quickly come to admire her tenacity and her sharp wit and her proud femininity and warm spirit. She's a matriarch whose presence fills the room, and yet she's humble and graceful and loving in such a way that I feel like I'm at home when I'm with her. And here's a fun fact. There's over 150 people on the wait list for today's talk. So Madeleine's kind of a big deal. So everyone, I'd like you to welcome to the stage Madeleine Shaw.
Okay, turn on the mic. And can you hear me? Yes. Awesome. Hey guys. Woo! So excited to be here with all of you. Thank you so much, Inder, for that kind introduction. Thank you, Mark, for inviting me. Jill, where are you? Wow, je suis tout à fait ravie par ta musique. Merci. Let us begin. All right, so yes, quick little personal shout out to Isle Joni and my sweet ride from Side Saddle, Vancouver's only woman-owned bike store. Amazing. So lots of types of cycles going on in our talk today. I want to begin with looking at a beautiful circular painting. This was painted by Lee Robinson, who's based up on Cortes Island, and a print of this hangs in my home, and it reminds me every single day of the power and the wisdom and the beauty of cycles. Now, a big part of my message today is going to be about the fact that cycles are all around us. They're inside us. Inder just gave a great list, but we're not always dialed into those. We're not always paying attention. We often take them for granted. It just is, right? But when we go deeper and we connect personally with these cycles, we can learn a lot about ourselves, about our creativity, about the world. So without further ado, I'd invite you all to get a little more present with the cycle that we are already in right now, which is, of course, our sweet breath. Our sweet breath. Please place a hand on your chest or your belly, or just enjoy the sensation of the air moving in and out of your nostrils. This is literally what is keeping us alive in this moment. Our breath, it not only is each breath a complete cycle, the breath bookends our entire lives. It is both the first and the last thing that we will ever do on our time on this planet. All right, so the next cycle I want to speak to is a metaphorical one. So to this notion of the human life cycle, the seasons or chapters of our lives, this is a very beautiful metaphorical interpretation using archetypes. And so the archetypes going left to right are the figure of the maiden. She represents youth and spring, followed by the mother. The mother represents adulthood and summer. The wise woman represents fall and midlife. And finally, the crone, who represents our elder years and winter. I will be using this as a framework for my presentation, so I'll be returning to this because, you know, we got to return. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Maiden Madeleine. Yes. So I was born and raised in a multi-generational white settler family right here on the unceded ancestral lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. These photos are to tell you two things about me. One, I love growing things. And that, of course, includes plants and flowers and gardens. But I also love growing businesses and relationships and conversations. The other one, I'm not quite sure how to sugarcoat this for you, so I'll just say it. I was a bad brownie. And I mean really bad. Like, I hated it. And we should have been running around in the forest and playing games. But no, we were sit tight, listen, learn how to be polite. It was all about how to be a good girl. And I was having none of it. This is a very early indication of a lifelong tendency around things like resistance to authority, nonconformity, and a bit of rebelliousness. Anyways, we will see more of her later because she is quite persistent. All right, this, what do we got here? So my story with cycles starts pretty much within a year of when this photograph was taken. Now, does anybody realize or recognize Dude in this photograph? Who is it? Bobby Leonarduzzi. Yes, it is Bobby Leonarduzzi. Okay, thank you. And for people who don't recognize that name, he was a Canadian soccer legend, Vancouver hometown hero, amazing guy. And I ended up meeting him at some charity event. My mom brought me to, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, I am in this moment, I chose this photograph because I am having the hormonal equivalent of an aneurysm. Caught on film for posterity. Has anybody seen Inside Out 2? Okay, so that is my Inside Out 2. That moment, look at my body language. I'm like cringing with embarrassment. It's like there is so much happening in my body in this very moment. I'm sure we can all remember being that age when everything is starting to change in this kind of freaked out, angst-ridden way, and yet it's so exciting and whatever. Anyways, I would have been around 12. Like Margaret Simon, Judy Blume's classic heroine. We got Margaret fans in the room? Anyone? Anyone? Yes, Margaret. Okay. So Margaret Simon and her friends were obsessed with puberty, essentially, this idea of becoming an adult woman and how cool it was going to be. So they would spend their time talking about all of it, like, boobs and bras and hair and blood and all the things. And I shared that interest with them. I couldn't wait to start my period. Somebody told me right about then that the average number of days in the human menstrual cycle was the same as the number of days in a lunar cycle. And my adolescent brain exploded. And in that moment, I think it's safe to say I was hooked on cycles from that second. What could it possibly mean that this massive external force that was like strong enough to move oceans, okay, was going to have a relationship with something that was going to happen inside me? I was sure it was going to be awesome. foreshadowing there. It was not awesome. And I quickly realized that my fascination with the moon and periods and becoming a woman and stuff was actually not cool. I was not supposed to talk about periods. They were considered to be kind of gross and awkward, made people embarrassed. And so therefore, I too should be embarrassed. And by the time this was taken, so this is 1985, I'm graduating from high school. I call this photograph the edge of 17, because I was a rather edgy 17-year-old. I've been taking hormonal birth control pills for 2 years at this point. So I'd gone from like being so excited about my period and becoming a woman and it was gonna be so great to like shut that shit down. It was not happening. And the Bad Brownie made a lot of appearances during this time, most notably in being asked to leave the girls' school I was attending for, quote, inciting rebellion in my peers. This is a true story, okay? All of this happened. Anyways, yes, so, but what the redeeming moment in all of this is actually the quote. I don't know if you can read it, but it's kind of prescient. Like, I had no idea at this point I was going to become an entrepreneur, let alone, you know, working on daring ideas and things like that, and having these kind of grandiose aspirations. But it's there, and I think that's kind of interesting. Sometimes our younger selves know things about us as adults that we may not appreciate. All right, life went on. I went to university, and the Bad Brownie showed up as a feminist activist. So I got introduced to feminism and it just changed my life. Like suddenly everything made sense. And so this is me. You can't see, well, it's my back. Look, see? You can tell this is me. I'm a group of student protesters. We're protesting, we're occupying the principal's office. Oh my God. Protesting the lack of action against violence against women happening then as now on university campuses. I marched, I organized, I did a million things. Okay, so the next important part of this cycle story took place about 2 years after that. Remember I started taking the pill in high school? Yeah, I went off it. It was like break up with the boyfriend, go off the pill, I'm a free woman now. And I would have been around 23, 24. And my cycle came back, and in the biggest way. So I'm talking going like 0 to 100 in a month. Okay, and I was feeling it all. And I'm not just talking about having big periods, I'm talking about the emotional part of it, right? So all of the stuff that I had anticipated as an adolescent, this sort of like, what is happening? What does this cycle mean? Was somehow like so present in my body, the ups, the downs, the emotions, the creativity, the energy. I started tracking my cycle and found an incredible source of insight into not just me and what was going on, but also my creativity. I also realized that my body was not able to tolerate conventional pads and tampons. So, inspired creatively by my cycle, I started making my own cloth washable menstrual pads and period underwear. Now, you've got to understand that in the early 90s, the idea of touching one's menstrual blood was like top level taboo. Like, do not, major, like alert, alert, biohazard, like a majorly socially transgressive thing to do, okay? But being the Bad Brownie, I approached the threat of my period and discovered that in fact, the emperor has no tampons. Come on, like this was about just me simply appreciating that my body was just doing its thing. This thing that I had tried to contain and control and be ashamed of and blah, 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 blah. And yeah, I knew that it was really something special. So it was this feeling of liberation that inspired me to take these products that I had made and start selling them to other people to see if they too would find it interesting. So this is entrepreneurship at its most raw. Like literally these are photocopied things that I put in plastic sandwich bags. I named the products Lunar in homage to my childhood fascination with the lunar cycle. And you got to remember, this is so analog, right? Not only is this pre-e-commerce, it is pre-internet. So I'm doing this, I'm literally going person to person to person to person. Do Do you want to talk about your period with me? You know, do you want to? No? Okay. How about you? Anyways, it turned out that actually a lot of people wanted to talk about their periods. And fortunately, it was in one of those conversations that I met this person. This is Suzanne Siemens. Yes, my dear, dear treasured friend and longtime business partner. And we united to build the company. I'll cycle back to you later. All right. So speaking of periods, let's talk about the menstrual cycle. But we don't need a biology lesson here today. This is more of exploring the cycle from a metaphorical perspective, if you will, right? Because obviously we don't all have menstrual cycles. In fact, most people don't. But most cycles are the same. They have this cadence, this rhythm, this buildup of like follicular energy, and like when we're imagining a new idea and you know, start getting excited, maybe feel it in our bodies. This really rich, fecund moment, summer-like ovulation. And then we go into the darker side, the down slope, the rest, reflection of the luteal cycle, where culminated with menstruation, of course, where we actually have the period, which gets all the attention. My point is that our cycles they have this rhythm, and every part of it matters. So we may think that we're just kind of flaking around, you know, reorganizing something in our kitchen or whatever, but actually somewhere in your brain, your creative ideas, you're in flow state, right? It's really, really important, because I think sometimes we always want to be in spring. We always want to be follicular. We feel like we need to increase our productivity and our creativity. Whereas in fact, I think sometimes we are exactly where we need to be, and we just need to let it happen. And trust me on this one when I say that cycles take their own damn time. All right, I also want to speak to the circadian rhythm. This is another great example of a cycle that we are all in all the time, every single one of us, and yet we are not sufficiently mindful of its wisdom. We are collectively sleep deprived. We do not get enough rest. We feel we don't value sleep nearly enough. Take it from a wise woman, menopausal person here at the front of the room who's telling you, if I knew then what I know now about how foundational sleep is to our overall health and well-being, I would have got on it a long time ago. Interestingly, though, to this point about it being a cycle, right, we can actually, the number one thing you can do to improve your sleep is go outside and take in morning daylight and just take that in, because it resets your entire circadian rhythm. All right. Yes. Yes, Frodo, we are going in cycles. Or circles, either way, I'll take it. Anyways, and yet, does this look familiar to you? So my central thesis this morning is that we are cyclical beings living in a linear world, okay? And so what I mean by that is that, you know, we're all breathing, we're all, you know, whipping around the sun on our beautiful planet that's rotating on its own axis, the entire universe. Everything around us is going on in a cyclical way, but do we take the hint? Nah. We speed date, we accelerate, we multitask, we listen to our podcasts at 2x, and we speed up our videos. And especially for those of us in the business world, this idea of hustle culture is still so prevalent. If you're an entrepreneur, you need to be moving fast and breaking things. You need to be working for 24/7. You need to rise and grind because you need to scale, because you need to disrupt, because you've, you know, like on and on and on, like the metaphors and the language that we apply to how we work and how we think about time are so at odds, I think, with our natural state of being. Okay, so where do I look for inspiration for a saner, more regenerative model for growth and life and creativity? A forest. So I would like to introduce you to, at this point, Dr. Lee Joseph, and she is a Squamish ethnobotanist. She is a writer. She is an entrepreneur. She should definitely be on this stage, and is one of the wisest women I have had the opportunity to learn from in quite some time. And Suzanne and I learned from her earlier this year. And she is here because I want to honor the fact that what I'm saying about cycles is not new. There's nothing new. You're learning my story, and that's cool. But all of this stuff about the way the world works is indigenous knowledge. This is stuff like you've had indigenous populations who've built entire calendars that are cyclical and circular. It's a part of their spiritual practice and something that kind of goes without saying. So when I think about that, I think of this image of a nurse tree. So in the same way that I'm learning from teachers like Lee, we are all doing this. We're all in this practice of like literally harvesting the nutrients, the thoughts, the creativity, the energy, the leadership of people all around us. My belief is that we actually are growing far more like a forest. This is a truly cyclical world that is compatible with cyclical beings and rhythms. What else? It also reminds me that creativity doesn't just happen in the present. I think there's this idea that we're being innovative now, right? It's all got to happen now or really soon. And when I think about my sort of creative greatest hits, it's remarkable. They all came from the past. So reusable menstrual products are as old as time. And it was my adolescent girl who told me that periods mattered. So my question to you is maybe our perception of linear time is also flawed, and that perhaps innovation can be accessed not just by innovating, but by remembering. All right, cycling back to our Lunapad story, here we are. So Suzanne and I, we did so many things. We laid the foundation for $1 billion marketplace. Yeah. We grew our company. We won awards. We wore beautiful dresses and all of this external trappings of success. And I'm sharing the other image here on the right of us. Not only did we mother our company, so at this point we're this stage, this archetype of the mother, right? So we've mothered our company, we are mothering our companies, but we also became biological mothers. This is a perfect example of this cyclical beings in a linear world. How does the workplace support parenthood? How does it support menstruation? How does it support menopause? How does it support the needs of caregivers? And this is only just being done right now. People are just starting to think about it. But for us, we, bad brownie moms, hacked that system and brought our kids to work with us. There was no maternity leave. There was very little access to flexible childcare. And so we did it, and I love it. And I think it's a great example of like, instead of this balance that, you know, this ridiculous balance, Jill, that we're always like, how do you do it kind of thing. My feeling is that when we integrate things and we bring them together, there's less tension around, you know, it's hard when things are far apart, we need to balance them, but when we bring them together, they're whole. So I'm a big fan of integration. Okay, so like a forest, though, we did not just grow our company. We grew a social change movement, okay? And so called menstrual equity. For folks who are new to menstrual equity, it means the access of free products to every single person who needs them of any gender, adequate education, and also a shame-free attitude towards periods. And this is sort of two beautiful examples of literally thousands that we accomplished. We're handing out free products at a food bank here in Mission, BC, and over on the right at McGill University. And like I said, these are just two examples of thousands. And so we've even upended the sort of capitalist model of menstrual products, and by ensuring that they get to people as a matter of basic human rights. Thank you. All right, about a year ago, the Lunapad/Isle circle came to an end. And Suzanne and I sold the company to a very, very spring-like, dynamic young menstrual health entrepreneur who is now carrying on our legacy. Look at that website. Is it ever beautiful? So that means that we can let it go. So what does that look like? For me, I am now, and this brings us to the wise woman. Okay, so I love saying that I'm a wise woman. It feels so cool. What is happening here? I mean, so many things. I'm menopausal, right? My daughter has left home for university and off into the world. My leaves are changing color, and I love this time. And interestingly, even though I have, quote, less time left, I feel zero sense of urgency around it. Isn't it interesting? Okay, so the wise woman is also known as the wild woman, and I did which has definite bad brownie potential, I think. Anyways, I did 2 wild things during COVID of all times. I wrote a book. That was great, creatively. But the other thing I did was I quit drinking. Yes. Okay, addiction is a cycle. What I did not appreciate is that in breaking that cycle, I would be starting a whole new one. And I've written, I don't even know how many tens of thousands of words on Medium about it. And I'm not stopping anytime soon. It's amazing. So I had no idea that was in me. And I'm just really enjoying it. So anybody want to check that out, please do. So I'm writing. And the other thing I'm doing right now is I have become one of my precious nurse trees, okay? Which is a metaphorical way of saying that I'm a mentor. And I work for various post-secondary institutions, incubators, and so on. One of my mentees, Chloe, is here in this room. Where are you, friend? Hey, thanks for coming. And anybody actually especially interested in addictions and youth must go see her. She's an incredible leader. And I just love this feeling that I am composting and upcycling my 30 years of experience and wisdom as an entrepreneur into a whole new canopy of impact ventures and leaders. Okay, so to close this out, I just want to invite you to consider what cycles you're in. They're all around us, they're inside us. Tune in, see what's there. I guarantee you will learn something about yourself and possibly even, yes, your creativity. Reminder, cycles take their own damn time. We're in a rush. Try and see if you can maybe slow that down. I know life is busy. Move gracefully and nurture things is my personal response to move fast and break things. So, thank you. Yes, bless you, major tech executive who came up with that one, but I do not agree, and this is my reframe, my pushback on that I offer you just for fun. And finally, the reminder that we're cyclical beings in a linear world. So I want to say to you that when you run into those tight corners that don't feel comfortable, or you're running up against those sharp edges of the linear world, it's not you, it's them. I invite you as creatives and designers to consider this from a design perspective. How might we design the world, our institutions, our buildings, to accommodate cyclical beings and our cyclical natures? All right, guys, we're going right back where we started from to this beautiful painting. And I would like to invite you to draw one final breath with me. And let it go. Thank you.
Told you. Now, this is a bit awkward because I have to come here and dictate time. We're going to take about 5 to 7-ish minutes or so to create our own little cycles. Now, I know it's going to be a little awkward because this room is tightly packed, but I know we can do it. If you haven't done this before, this part of the morning, we get into small little circles and have a quick chat about what cycle you're in, or what about this talk stood out to you. So I encourage you to do that now. Okay, so we're going to get into a Q&A now. For anyone that has a question, please put your hand up. I'm going to do my best to cue you up and then run a microphone to you.
Christine! What is your question, my friend?
Okay, so my question, the short question is, what are the cycles in a dream? And I'm curious about that because we talk about a year and the new year's coming up and I have all these dreams and things that I want to do, and so I have that feeling of urgency of like, oh, I want to make these happen quickly. How can I make them? How do I throw myself into this? But I'm sensing from your talk that's maybe not the best way to do that, and probably why things start to peter out quickly. So what are the cycles of a dream when you have something that you want to make happen? yeah, what are the cycles in there?
Yeah, thank you. And can you hear me now? Yeah, great. When you were first asking the question, my mind immediately snapped to sleep. And the stages of sleep, and I'm like, what do I know about dreams? And it's like I know about the 4 stages of sleep and all that. And I find the most powerful thing that I can do when I feel like there's some kind of that little just slightly follicular energy just flickering inside me of an idea is I tell someone about it. And there's something magic that happens, and we've seen it today, that in real life conversation and connection and sharing. And I find myself sometimes when I say something out loud, that I find myself saying something that I didn't know that I had been consciously thinking before. And also just getting feedback, like having someone hear you, having someone witness you, and then I follow whatever comes from that and see what questions they ask you. See how you feel in your body as you're telling the story. And so that's where I sort of go with this really simple, basic, like you don't need a big focus group and you don't need anything to do with computers or whatever. Is just find someone you trust, or even a stranger, even better. That can be so fun. Is meet someone at a cocktail party instead of like, hey, what do you do? It's like, hey, can I run something by you? And be like, okay. Like remember that it's out there for you. It's looking for you, and that in engaging in these seemingly flow state is another thing I'm a huge fan of. It's like when I want to work on a creative idea, I'll go and bake a batch of muffins. And just let it happen, and not even worry about it. Just let my body engage in something else, and then finally rest. Thank you. Thanks, friend. Good luck. Wow.
I have a quick question. Do you want me to take this for you for now?
Well, I'm kind of enjoying holding it. It's so beautiful. Okay. It's a bit heavy, but
that's what I was thinking.
I'm just okay. But I'm going to put it here for now, but I do love it. And it's purple. It's my favorite color. Okay, who else has a question?
Can you get that one? I got the mic.
Yeah, I got this side.
Okay, there's a question over here. Or someone else first. I'm not gonna be the referee of questions.
Hi, I felt like it was a missed opportunity. I was really excited, and then you didn't tell that story. How did you get kicked out for inciting a rebellion? You gotta tell us.
It would have taken too long. It's really because I only had 20 minutes. So it was a process that went on over several years, and it showed up of like I would not often be able to stop laughing, which is not what you want in science class. Like it was not cool. I had a propensity for mocking my teachers. Imitating them, like I had some, anyways, I basically was like, just with my fellow students, I was like, come on, like, this is no fun. And getting them to sort of mimic my behavior. And it was this irrepressible, uncontrollable, wild, like so much of it came from laughter, honestly, and just not being able to stop laughing. And but I did there may have been boys and parties and cigarettes and things like that involved too. So there was that edge as well, but mostly it was a behavioral thing, and that it seemed to be infectious among my peers, and that I was relentless. I just didn't get over it. Yeah. Thank you. I'm so glad. Yeah, I asked why too many times.
Any other questions back here? There's one way back there, Rick.
Hi.
Okay. Hello. Thank you for the talk, first of all. And my question is, maybe it is a little bit personal, but I still want to ask it.
Bring it on.
We're here talking about cycles,
right.
How it can be even more personal. It's like hard to underestimate the importance of the birth control pill. But at the same time, if you take your mind that you have right now back to yourself when you started using the pill, would you still do it?
Yeah, I like to think that I would, because I always had that love of cycles. It just would have been met a little bit earlier. But what's sort of significant for me about the story, that profound story of disappointment, of that anticipating that, starting my period was going to be so great, and then how it was so not great, was that sometimes, and this may be true for some of you, it's those wounds, those issues that come up in our lives, and when we push back, and when we try and find ways to heal from them. Because really, when you look at it, you can read my entire career as a response to attempt to heal that inner 12-year-old, right? So I don't know what would have happened otherwise. It probably would have happened in a gentler way. The bad brownie might have had less to kind of push against or mess around with. But it's just the way it went down. But I think there's something that can be significant when that kind of like that no and that pushback and that creative spark of saying, I'm going to make it different for me, I'm going to make it different for others, I'm going to make it different for my kid. That kind of feeling that can be that sort of creative rage, if you will. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the question. It was wonderful.
Any other questions? We've got one over
there's
here.
a couple over on the other side.
Great, thank you. I know previously you've described yourself as a serial entrepreneur, and part of that is going through cycles of starting and then transitioning. And often, I think there's a focus on the starting part. Mm-hmm. What does it look like when you're transitioning, when you're like, okay, it's time to move on, like passing Isle or G-Day and others? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. Well, again, that luteal feeling of loss and the downside is real, and I think that, but necessary. And so I don't ever see those losses as absolute. Like, even though we're not, we don't have Lunipads or Isle anymore, we don't do that, but the legacy that what we've created goes on in so many ways, and similarly to what Jen pointed to with Fire and Flowers. So that's what happened with G-Day. So we had to shut it down with COVID. Nobody wanted events for 200 or 300 people happening, whatever. And so we took that charitable entity and kind of upcycled it into Fire and Flowers legal structure, right? And who are carrying on the same intention, it just looks different. So I look for opportunities, again, back to this forest model of like, how can the intention or the intention of the values be upcycled and just look a little bit different? And I love seeing examples like that, but I think it's important to grieve. Like, I think it's important to really experience like that whole cycle of, everything from the excitement, we just want the buzz, right? It's like that with drinking. Nobody wants the hangover. But if you're going to do it, then you're going to feel it all. And I think the more present that we can be of all aspects of those cycles, then it can be helpful as we move on. Like, it helps us to release them and see what happens next. Thank you for that question. I love that question.
Hi. It's not really a question. It's just I wanted to thank you because you reminded me. I've realized since I have gone through menopause, I'm on the other side, that the relief of not having to deal with those cycles, the freedom I have, and I wanted to share this with the younger folks here, is amazing. And I probably have a lot of healing I could do about pre-menopause, but the relief in not having to deal with it and just get on with my life is amazing. And you reminded me of that today, so the freedom I have, and I thank you for that.
Absolutely, and actually you reminded me of something that I wanted to say in the talk, because I am so much about the menstrual cycle, it begs the question about, like, what about everybody else, right? And my experience of being in menopause, post-menopause now, is that I am far more open and able to access the wisdom of other cycles and see ones that I didn't see before and become just more in tune. And so it's almost like I was sort of distracted by this thing that's happening inside me. And now I have this incredible openness and receptivity. And so to folks who do not menstruate out there, like, just the fact that you do not have this personalized thing happening inside you, you're not missing anything. Like, you still are part of this and you still get it, right? And so thank you for that. That's wonderful feedback. Yeah.
We have time for one more question. I think we have one lined up.
Hi. Happy Friday to you. I've been in this kind of like journey, like part of this whole linear scheme that society has put into all of us. I feel like we have all become very individualistic.
Yes.
Lately, I've been in this journey to, kind of like develop at a deeper level my relationship with my closest friends, my partner, my family. Have you been, or how do you deal with the challenge of aligning your cycle with your closest people, like your closest family members or loved ones, when maybe there's misalignment or, have you been in that challenge and how have you dealt with it?
Yeah, I love that. And as you're speaking, I'm going back to that slide of the trees in the forest, right? Where there's this illusory vision of like tree. I'm a tree, you're a tree, you're a tree, you're a tree, you're a tree. And we are these individuals, right? Whereas the reality is that we're all connected and largely through cycles, but in other ways, in the same way that trees are actually connected underneath through these vast, networks of roots and mycelium and fungus. And to me, actually having conversations around cycles it's healing. Like it's something like, whether it's like, I wanted to talk about the fact that I felt like I had an addiction problem for years before I did, because I felt ashamed of it. When I started selling Lunar pads, I discovered all these people who were dying to talk about their periods, but somebody had told them that, maybe you shouldn't. And so to me, it's like having those hard conversations that are about the personal things that are affecting us can be incredibly healing and bonding with others, because we're just showing up as our true selves. It gives them permission then to share what's going on with them. How are they feeling about aging? How are they feeling about parenting? What's happening, seasonal, whatever, mood disorder, all these things, mental health. Oh my gosh, like it's all there. So I think by modeling it ourselves, like when you step up, and it's incredible, the thing, like when I started telling people publicly that I'd quit drinking, people were like, oh, thank you. And I thought it was going to be like, oh my God, I don't want to know about that. And does that mean I have a problem? Like this isn't about you. And anyways, so that's what I would suggest is like it's a be the change message, and then see what's there, because I think when you can touch that emotional frequency of trust with others by being vulnerable yourself, that really, really rich conversation and connection, that true, the next level of intimacy kind of reveals itself. Thank you.
And with that, the cycle of questions is complete. Madeleine Shaw, everybody.
Thank you.